Sandra, you have led in a number of arenas, and you've led small teams and large teams. I love, and just us getting to know each other, you had said something that you had this moment where you realized that there was a sin of self-sufficiency. And though that's not listed in the Old or New Testament, I loved it. It could be heresy, but we're not even going to go there. We're making up our own sin right now. Can you unpack that and bring some clarity? Because I think so much of the millennial generation, my generation, is so self-absorbed, me, myself, and I, and we could do it all. Talk to us about your learning and share with those that are watching what you've learned in the process.
Well, it's interesting. I was raised in South Louisiana without a lot of economic benefits. You know, I was raised poor, and I was taught from a very young age that to get out of our situation, that it was all about education and good grades and A pluses. And so from a very young age, it was all about my own personal achievement, but grades as a sense of getting out into the world. So it worked, got a scholarship, went to college, again, had to work my way through school, 2-3 jobs and tutoring and working at the news station and all these, you know, it was survival mode. So again, relied on myself, right? The Lord was always there, and I see in hindsight so many times when he completely rescued me and pulled me out of the pit. But when you are raised to believe that you're your only ticket, then you sort of start believing that. And so rising up the corporate ladder, it was, I'm going to work 20 hours a day, and I'm not going to have friends, and I'm not going to have dates, and it's going to be all about what I can bring to a company. And so, and then you get rewarded for that. You get in the next job and the next company, and you're handed the keys to the washroom and all that, you know, fancy stuff, and you start to believe it. And, you know, over time, I believed that I could do anything I put my mind to, that if I surrounded myself with the right team members and I led them and empowered them and mentored them, that, you know, with a group of people, we could accomplish whatever we needed to do.
So what was the pivot point? What was the pivot point where you said, I cannot lean on me anymore?
Yeah. There were 3 in particular. Surviving 9/11 in Manhattan was the first. You know, I had done everything right, was in the right place with the right clients and the right team. And in that moment, of course, God changed our entire world. I was able to get out of the city, and in this moment where I'm rushing with my team toward the chaos of the buildings, the first building came down. And of course, when that building came down, the concrete fog mass is moving toward us all, and then we're all running north trying to escape it. And all these people are emerging out, and we were there in this moment, and I was covered in concrete dust. You know, the trader with the alligator briefcase was covered in concrete dust, and the hot dog vendor who had been selling $3 hot dogs a moment ago was covered in concrete dust. And in that moment, it was very clear to me that this is what it's going to be like when I'm facing the Lord. We're all going to look exactly the same. All those layers and titles and achievements are nothing. They're worthless. So that was the first moment where I realized everything I had worked for, this achievement, this self-sufficiency, meant nothing. In fact, it was keeping me from what really mattered. The next point, after I was married and had a fabulous child at 38, and a year later was pregnant again. And on the very same day that I went in for an ultrasound, and they told me that the baby had a cystic hygroma, which meant her heart was failing and she could not live outside of my womb. That night, my doctor then called and said, not only is my heart broken for you, but I'm calling to tell you that you have full-blown cervical cancer. So I was faced with a moment where I'm pregnant with a baby that can't live, and I have cancer and need treatment, but I can't have treatment because I'm pregnant. And, you know, I tell people now, in hindsight, it's very clear, God sent baby Kathleen to me to get me to the doctor to find the cancer. And then once they found it, she had done her job, and she was called home then 3 weeks later. God really removed me having to make any decisions. You know, up to that point, I had controlled everything. And so in that moment, he told me, you do nothing. You know, everyone was swirling with an opinion and advice and doctors. And I did nothing. I just was in the center of the storm and very peaceful. 3 weeks later, he called her home.
And the third point?
The third point then, after baby Kathleen, we couldn't conceive again. And we went through different try this, do that, all these tricks, Again, when you have these career women, they have their career first. No one tells you, by the way, it's really hard to get pregnant after 35. And by the way, here are all the things that could happen. No one tells you those things. They say, go get it, girl, right? And so next thing you know, I'm 40 years old, and I had just been delivered. God had healed me from cancer. He had, had amazing people come alongside me and pray over me, and I had one cancer treatment, and I was cancer-free. Wow. But I couldn't get pregnant. And so what did I do? I went to a fertility doctor. Again, sin of self-sufficiency, and I did 18 months of fertility treatments, and we had 3 more miscarriages. So fast forward to 42 years old, survived cancer. God completely delivered me, 4 losses of pregnancies, and the fertility doctor says, Mr. and Mrs. Williamson, we don't recommend you spend any more of your financial or emotional resources trying to conceive your own baby. And it just hit me in that moment. It hit me that this is where I was not where I was supposed to be. And I said, well, thank you, but you're not God. And he said, he's the only one who can help you now. I said, you're right, that's where I should have been. I went home, I threw away all these little vials I'd been jabbing into my stomach, making me crazy and fat, and I just got on my face with the Lord. Again, just remove that sin of self-sufficiency and said, I can't do this. I can't, continue to want, and ask. And just totally changed my life, totally changed my prayer life, totally changed how I went to him in worship, and just was so grateful for everything he had done for me. Awesome. And less than 2 months later, thought I was going into early menopause and was pregnant.
Surprise.
Surprise. So I had Jonah at 42, and God has a great sense of humor, because then when Jonah was 15 months old, we found out we were pregnant again. And I had James at 44. And so I now sit here with a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old and a fabulous 9-year-old. So
oh, wow.
Every time that sin of self-sufficiency was removed and I was freed from it, that's when God gave me the most amazing things.
I love it. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing it with so much candor. We appreciate you, and we appreciate all your amazing stories. Thank you, Sandra.